Hello and welcome back to the Point Left podcast with your hosts
Skylar
and Kaylin. Yeah.
Nice.
Last night we had the blessing of seeing Hozier live in concert at the Hollywood Bowl. It was spiritual, to say the least, I would say.
Kaylin got to see a really embarrassing side of me in where I just start like, I can feel my shoulders shaking with sobs, and I'm like, she can see you.
You did sob like 3 times, but I feel like it's like warranted. Like it makes sense. I didn't sob, but I did tear up. I tore up a couple times.
She tore that shit up.
I teared up. I guess teared up, yeah.
Yeah.
But
I tore up.
Why does that sound wrong?
Man, I tore up a little bit in sadness. The stanky leg and grief.
Yes, that was a blessing. We had many horrors persist over the course of a Hollow weekend last weekend.
Oh my god.
Can you believe that was only a week ago?
That was an ancient meme. I just drag out from the Vine days. Yeah, no, dog. I got that dog in me and she's tired.
We just had basically at least a brief recap of my weekend. Saturday morning, me and my roommate Taylor were going to get breakfast with one of our friends. And her car stalls in the middle of an intersection, like literally in the middle. Like we were trying to turn left, so we were pulled out into the intersection. So then that happened, and then we couldn't even get breakfast because
they couldn't even get breakfast. They don't even have dental.
No. Because we had to get the car towed and do all these things. We did eat eventually, but not until like 1 or 2 p.m. So that's how I started my weekend off. And then Saturday, Halloween, not Halloween, but we went to a Halloween party. Had the most horrifying Uber ride of our entire lives collectively. I feel like I can speak for the car when I say.
Yeah. The spine chilling. Oh my god. Because here's my thing. It's like a joke that like if you're in an Uber, you just kind of nod uncomfortably when your Uber driver is saying some questionable things because your life is in their hands. So if they're just like, oh man, they just start ranting about like stupid shit or like start ranting about Joe Biden or the gays or women or whatever. You just kind of go like, because you're like, listen, man, I got about 7 more minutes of you in the car and then we part ways forever. So you just kind of have to go like, You just let me out here, actually, if that's no big deal. And I employed my previous strategy of dealing with people I didn't like on public transportation, like in Chicago, by acting like I was asleep. So immediately, once he opened his mouth and started saying some like questionable, annoying Uber driver things, I slumped over on my friend Keely's shoulder and I was like, good night. Because then I'm like, no one's going to engage with me. I can just pretend that this is all fake. Maybe I'll actually take a nap. Who knows? And so that's where we all were. It was one of us in the front, 3 of us in the back. And I was just like, whatever, I'll just pretend to be unconscious. And then when we get home, we'll get home. And then that'll be my night. And then, call it the spirit of Satan, but something compelled this man to put literally every single one of us on edge.
I have never truly, I've had some questionable, like, Uber rides. I feel like we all have. But I have never truly been like, so this man's a serial killer. Truly, I've never felt so in danger.
We are about to be victims, for real.
For real. And I'm so glad that there were 4 of us in the vehicle, because truly, if it was just 1 or even just 2 of us, I probably would have been much more fearful. But I was more like, I don't know if it was because I was a little drunk or what, but I was like kind of laughing. I was just like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? Like, this is how the night ends? This is how the night ends? Many horrors. It did sound like he,
should we just explain the scene instead of tiptoeing around it? I don't know why we are.
Yeah, I guess so. Basically this man, I don't know, he starts talking about politics, whatever. We're like, okay, cool.
He's like, are you guys interested in talking about that? And we go, no. And he goes, all right. And he just keeps going. And we're like, fine.
Yeah, we're like, sure. And then out of nowhere, he goes, hey, you guys should really be careful of like whose car you get into. Like, you need to make sure that you're checking that it's like the right name of the Uber driver. And we're like,
immediately we all just still.
We're like, why would you say that?
And then you can tell because Taylor's in the front seat. She's like, oh, I did. Is this Johnny, right?
Yeah.
And you can tell that there's like a little bit of panic that's creeping up in her voice. And I'm like, and he goes, no, you guys picked right. Don't get me wrong. You guys were right. But a lot of girls aren't right.
Yeah.
And we're like, and that's when I start stirring a little bit. I was like, even in my state, I like open my eyes and I'm like, they like pop open. I'm like, right. Righto.
Yeah. And then he just randomly, he's like, there are a lot of Uber drivers out here who are like raping and murdering girls. Like, you guys need to be really careful. And he's like, right over there on that corner, 2 girls were raped last week. And we're like, so how do you know that? Like, was it you?
He's like, these girls are just getting into the back of Uber drivers doing the I'm drunk routine, and then they wake up across the border. And I'm like, the classic I'm drunk routine.
Classic.
I mean, women be like pretending that they're knockout drunk unconscious in the back of Ubers. You know how they do. You know how women do.
Yeah, how women are. Just women things. Just girly things. Yeah, no, truly horrifying. And we were supposed to have 2 stops, and we were like, no, I think we're going to get out here, actually. I think we're going to get out at the first stop. Thank you so much. And then we stop, and then he gets out of the car, and we're like, oh my God, he's getting a hatchet. He's going to chase after us. And we're like, go, lock the doors.
My favorite part of this whole story is like, this man truly did not know any of us. He did not know which apartment was ours. He didn't know our names, but for some reason we're like, no, we have to make our improv kicked out. Believable. So I'm getting text messaged from Taylor being like, Skylar, invite us to your apartment for a sleepover. And then we did, and it was very yes and. I was like, actually, it's kind of late. Do you guys want to crash on my couch? And you're like, actually, that should be fine. Taylor, do you want to do that? Taylor's like, yeah, I could do that. He's like, yeah, I could do that too. I was like, yeah, I mean, it should be okay with my roommate. Let me double check. I think I have like, I don't know, pillows or something, or I'll have to double check. And Taylor's like, I can help like fold the linens if you want, and like we can go to the laundry room after, like it'll be fine. And I'm like, yeah, I think I have enough makeup wipes also. Make sure you guys can sleep in your. We were like, what is this, a fucking skit? To the point where we got to my apartment, and I'm like, so
he had no idea whose apartment this was.
No, but we're sitting around. We're like, the lights aren't, whatever. The light was on already, so it's not like we like turned the light on when we got in. It was on, and then I was like. Part of me was like, that was really convincing improv to the point where I was like, so where do you guys want to sleep?
You're like, oh.
Which side of the couch?
You didn't mean it?
Oh, you didn't? I knew that. No, I knew that.
For sure.
I was just going to make pancakes in the morning, but that's fine. Yeah. I mean, I'll just make myself. It's fine.
So that was our night. And then, personally, my horrors persisted the next day.
Must they?
Because my tire was flat. And I thought I was going to have to get new tires. I had to like literally on Monday that day. Oh my God, wait. Sorry. I just realized that the horrors persisted throughout the weekend. Like outside of the weekend as well. So my tire,
get no breaks.
My tire was flat. It was like boom, 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 club, another club,
bus,
horror,
club.
Another horror. So my tire was flat. I tried to change the tire myself, wasn't working. I had to call roadside assistance.
I was
or
like,
whatever.
why did I think of AARP? I'm like, that's not.
No.
You don't know AARP.
AAA.
Yeah.
I had to call roadside assistance and have someone come and change my tire for me, and then I had to go and get it fixed. Luckily, they just had to patch it, so I didn't actually have to get like new tires because that would have been fucking expensive, and it was only like $22 to get my tire patched. So that's all fixed. That's fine. Then I was supposed to go on a date that night.
Oh. This Seinfeld ass plot that comes to us straight out of a 90s sitcom.
Mm-hmm. So I was supposed to go on a first date that night. Of someone I met on a dating app, whatever. And I do the thing I feel like most women do, where I Google his phone number, because I'm like, I want to make sure, one, that like this is actually the person who I'm meeting, and two, just like general, like I just want to know your last name. I just want to have some like reassurance,
This whole process really just made me realize how much I raw dog online dates, huh? I'm just show up, I'm like, well, I have faith.
No, I'm always Googling.
I be Googling.
And what I discovered was so shocking and horrifying. Not anything wrong on his part. But we did have the same last name. We had the same last name.
Isn't his family also from like the same area?
Yes, and his family is from the same area that like my side of the family is from. And I'm like, oh my god. Oh my god, are we related? Oh my god, are we related? Is this like my second cousin? Like, what the fuck? What? So then I have to do the most awkward thing of my entire life. I have to call him and be like, hey, sorry, this is super weird, but I did Google you, and I think we might be related.
His response, though, was fucking hilarious. He goes, I mean...
Yeah, he was literally like, I mean, probably not. And I was like, what do you mean? We have the same last name.
He's like, I'm into it. Who's to say?
Yeah, I was like, we have the same last name, and he's like, well, I'm still down if you are. I was like, no, I'm respectfully, I cannot date someone with the same last name as me.
He'd be like, hey, we might be related. He goes, okay, and? Okay. You called me for that?
Yeah.
I knew that. You don't remember me? It's me.
It's me.
Yeah. Do you remember Nana's funeral?
Those were the horrors of my weekend. Did you have any additional horrors or just the Uber ride for the most part?
Daily horrors at work.
Oh, yeah.
We live in a society, and I want to not work ever again. Yeah. However, we really do be out here. And that's all I can really say about that. And I'm like, you know what? I feel like such a jet setter right now. Because here's the thing. I make plans because I'm so bad at being like, the 9th is a Tuesday. Like, I'm terrible at being like, numbers correlate with actual dates. Mm-hmm. And so I always just agree and I make plans on everything. And then they all show up at the same time. And I'm like, what? I overbook myself all the time to the point where I need like a personal like assistant to be like, here's your latte. Also, here are your appointments for today. I need Tiara Gold from High School Musical 3. I need her. And so I accidentally, because I bought these concert tickets like months ago, and within the span of like 1 week, I've been to 3 concerts. I am old. Why the fuck am I not bouncing back faster? God. I'm like, right now, if you were like, hey, here's your favorite, you want to see Taylor Swift again? I'd go, no. No, I don't. You want to see Troye Sivan? I can't. I have nothing else to give. And most of those are just standing. Yeah. Standing and vibing. And I don't even have the energy to stand and vibe, which bodes very poorly for daylight savings if I'm already lacking energy to do the things that I love. And it's wintertime.
Yeah, so when are we going to all collectively agree that, like, daylight savings is stupid and we don't need to do it? I don't understand.
Flies, like, in my mouth.
Because literally, I'm like, it was already getting dark at, like, 6, 7 o'clock. Like, that's too early. That's too early, frankly. Actually, not even, no, yeah, like 6 o'clock. I feel like 6 p.m. is absolutely the earliest it should get dark. Now, it's going to start getting dark at 5? I'm not even done with my workday at 5. Dude, what do you mean?
Being at the computer still working when it's dark, I'm just like, what am I, on the night shift? Is it 9 p.m.? Do I have a family waiting up on me at home?
No, it's actually horrifying. Yeah, not and the horrors persist. Sorry, I keep saying that, but truly
we've got to start being positive.
Truly they do. Yeah, but hey, you know what? Here, what are our you know, like the hills and valleys? What's your valley for the week? Do you know what I'm talking about at all?
Not.
You know when you're at summer camp and they're like, okay, I would say like your hills and valley, or like when you're on like a school field trip. Sometimes they'll do that on the bus, and they're like your high and low of the day.
No, I don't know what that is. They didn't care what we thought, or they didn't care what we believed or had
It's fun. Just like, I feel like it gives children a space to be like, hey, this is what sucked, but also there were good things about the day too.
That's nice. Okay, so valleys are good or bad? Valleys are bad.
I think valleys are.
Because if mountains,
I feel like hills are like hard to get up, but valleys are easy.
But they're like higher versus lower. That's where I'm confused.
Oh, let's just say ups and downs.
Okay,
positives and negatives. Let's keep it simple.
All right, so I've said plenty of downs. Let's think of an up.
Yeah, what are?
Oh my god, I saw Steven Sanchez. I can't start another obsession. It's too soon. Heartstopper still has me. I can't double up. We watched The Holdovers, which is probably like one of my new favorite Christmas movies of all time.
Yeah, it was good. Sorry. For me personally, there was a bit of a jump scare, but that was fine.
Which one?
Him having a literal schizophrenic parent. My childhood literally being on the screen with no warning.
I didn't even think about that until just... Oh, I didn't realize it was a time to be schizophrenia.
No, yeah, it just came out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, and frankly, it was an accurate depiction. But yeah, sobbing.
Well, all right.
So that was, I mean, another personal horror, but it was good. It was good. It was a very good movie. I urge everyone to see it. Okay, so this week's episode, I thought it would be kind of interesting. I feel like there's a lot of discourse about like how technology and like iPads and iPhones and all that stuff directly impacts like childhood development and just like children in general. But I haven't really seen that much conversation around how technology with parents affects their relationship with their children and also affects like childhood development through like their own actions with their relationship with technology. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. I'm talking a lot. Well, I'm not even going to tell you because guess what? You're going to listen. So, so first of all, I have a couple questions for you to kind of set the scene. How old were you when you got your first cell phone?
Cell phone or smartphone?
Cell phone. My next question was going to be, was it a smartphone?
Okay. I got a shitty flip phone in middle school in the 7th grade because that's when I started to get into extracurriculars and I needed something to communicate to my parents when I was going to need to be picked up late after school.
Yeah.
I think it was either 6th grade or 7th grade. I'm pretty sure it was 7th grade, but it could have been 6th grade. Actually, mine was kind of cool. I got it from Walmart. It was like a part flip phone, part kind of touch screen because the flip phone part could be like folded back. So you flipped it up and it was like a keyboard. It was this horizontal phone. And if you flipped that horizontal phone vertical, it could be like a vertical like kind of touch screen.
I know
but
what you're
like
talking about.
But
it wasn't a smartphone.
Did not work. No, in fact, if you hit the internet button, you had to be like,
otherwise you get charged $1 million.
Dude, I remember that cell phone too. I broke up with my first ever boyfriend over text, in the back seat of the car on a long road trip. And then I had to go back in and tearfully erase all of my messages so that way my mom couldn't read any of them and know that I had had a boyfriend.
Oh my God.
It's okay. That was the gay one. It was just more like an emotional heartbreak than anything.
Yeah.
And then I think I got my first smartphone in high school. I think when I was like a freshman in high school.
Do you know like what year?
Oh God, 2014 maybe.
2014. Okay.
Maybe 2015.
Similar.
Ugh.
Okay, so your parents did go through your phone. Did they read your messages and stuff?
Yeah,
they did.
To this day, and like I know it's like a force of habit, but like to this day, like I don't have a password on my phone. I know I should because my whole life is in there. But yeah, it would just be like random. They'd be like phone check, and because I mean they didn't do it often enough, but it was just enough to keep me on my toes. And if I was on something, they would just kind of go like they would stick their hand out for me to give it to them. And if I like hesitated a little bit, they'd be like, okay, now give me. Like it was more like a test of like the old thing of like you raise your hand to punch someone. It's like 2 for flinching. It was just more like a test to see like if you would just willingly give it. Because if you just gave it over, like without like blinking, they'd be like, all right, I'm bored. I don't actually care what's on here. But if I'm like, oh yeah, hold on, they'd be like, what are you erasing? And
just fan fiction.
Well, actually,
explicit fan fiction. That's what was on my phone.
That was what was on my computer.
Oh.
They didn't check that because I was writing, so they just assumed that I was just doing homework and writing on my novel about my half mermaid pirate, which I was. But also, I was going through like, AO3, fanfiction.net, Wattpad, etc.
Did they ever track your location or anything?
No, they did not do that. I think because they didn't know how to. I think if like the tracking technology was better at the time, they would have. My parents didn't even really get a Snapchat until like I was a junior or senior or whatever. Mostly My parents just wanted to make sure I like wasn't saying anything salacious over like text messages. Good thing they didn't even know what Tumblr was, so I could have Tumblr on my phone. They didn't know that that's where I was gaining a personality and learning about social justice and looking at sex gifs.
Yeah, there was a lot of porn on Tumblr.
But also Glee fandom spaces, they will never find my Glee blog. They'll never find it, and you'll never find it. You won't. And I know you're really proud of like your internet sleuthing skills. I've made it impossible. But yeah.
Did they ever track your grades through an online portal? Like, did you have like a grading portal that they checked like regularly?
No.
Okay.
But my school did this thing where like every 2 weeks they would print out a report, or like not report cards, but like weekly check-ins or whatever, and I was supposed to bring those home and show them.
Did they have to like sign it or whatever?
Occasionally, they did, or they would just expect to see it. They'd be like, "Where's your recent like grade report?" Like I'd just be sitting at the kitchen counter, and they'd be like, "Where is it? I know you have it," and I'd have to be like, I doodled all over it while school was in session. So I'm like, "Here you go," and then they're like, see." Interesting.
Okay. Last question.
Okay.
This is kind of a two-parter. Did your parents like share photos or memories or stories of you online on social media, on like Instagram or Facebook or whatever, that one, you didn't want them to, or two, people made fun of you for?
Yeah, that's all of it.
Oh.
Dude, all that my dad doesn't care, but all that my mom ever did was post pictures of me and my sister all over. And like, she didn't post pictures of like my naked ass or anything, but like if I thought I looked ugly in a picture, she'd be like, "Well, I look good." Or she's like, "You do not." And like, on the one hand, that's meme fodder, and I'm glad she posts them now because I can look back and be like, dork.
Yeah.
And so maybe I'm like, "Mom, I look really ugly in that." She's like, "Oh, shut up. You do not. See, look at all your grandparents that are liking it." But there were a couple of videos, like, one thing that my family likes to do is if one of us is sleeping in the back seat, we all like to turn around and scream and pretend like we're all getting in a car accident, and then my mom or someone will film it. So there's a video of me just completely unconscious in the back seat. That happened to my sister a ton. And she would post those videos of basically us being like jolted awake because we think we're about to die.
Oh my God.
So those are up there. As far as like, did people at school like look at those pictures and make fun of me? No, because I had given them plenty of fodder in real life. Like, it wasn't like I was like a popular kid and they're like, hey dork, I saw that your mom posted a picture of you. Like, that's unflattering. Because I would just show up to school and talk. They didn't need to stalk my mom's Facebook.
You're like, "No, I did that myself." So thanks. Okay, interesting. You have a little bit of a different experience than I do. I do think your parents are a little younger than mine, and also my dad, well, actually both my parents just didn't really give a fuck about the internet. So I feel pretty lucky. My dad didn't get a smartphone until probably like 2015, maybe 2016.
Kev.
He literally had like just a flip phone, and he had that flip phone for as he held out for as long as he could.
I miss the
he
power
really
of a
did.
flip phone.
I know, the drama. And at that point, like, I was already in high school, and frankly, he barely knew how to use it, and he certainly wasn't tracking me on it or sharing anything to social media. I think he just got an Instagram like 2 years ago, and it was literally just so he could like connect with his kids, like, and see what they're up to now that they're all out of the house. And while I do think, unfortunately, my parents' ignorance of like social media and technology gave me the freedom to, talk to strangers on the internet and leave a remarkably embarrassing digital footprint for myself. I did have privacy. I had a lot of privacy, and I think I was granted a lot of freedom and autonomy with my just like how I navigated the internet. I do think that we're kind of one of the last generations to like have this privilege of our parents like needing to catch up with technology. I think nowadays most parents of like tweens and teens are pretty hyper vigilant about the dangers of the internet, and they've adapted pretty well to the new norms of social media, online grading systems, and they basically know every single way that they can like supervise and like surveil their children virtually if needed. I do remember in school, a lot of parents, my parents never did this. Again, I don't know if they knew how to. But I knew a lot of kids in high school whose parents, they were on like Life 360 or whatever. And their parents were constantly tracking them. And while I think that's a helpful thing, absolutely, just for like safety reasons, I do know a lot of people whose parents would literally text them and be like, "Where are you? You need to come home right now. Like, that is not where you were supposed to be." And it was just like a complete, I think, like, fallen, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like it just really crumbles your trust between like you and your kid.
And like, to be fair, when I talk about the fact that my parents weren't really involved in my internet experience, I don't necessarily say that as like a thankful thing. Like, because here's the thing, on the one hand, I do appreciate, obviously, privacy, and, privacy is important. I have a story to tell, actually, later. It's about McDonald's. It's very funny. But on the other hand, it's like, I feel like the old, news segments of like, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? And like, you would go on these news sites and just be like, all right, there's this hot new app. Do you know if your teen has it?
Yeah.
And they'd be like, you don't. And I do think it's important, because here's the thing. And we'll say this once, we'll say it 1,000 times. We just saying the word algorithm is like our boogeyman on this podcast, but it is so remarkably easy for children's moldable minds to fall down algorithms that you have no clue. Yeah. And it's heartbreakingly common to hear stories of realizing that your like 10-year-old is like following Andrew Tate, and you don't know what they're like, you don't know what they're saying in like oh my God, why can't I think of it? Stream
InfoWars?
Yes, InfoWars, but also like Twitch streamers. You don't know what they're going on, like if they're in chat rooms. You don't like the fact that my parents didn't know about Omegle is, on the one hand, thank God, because I would have gotten grounded, but also they probably should have known. Yeah. Not that I was doing anything like terrible, but again, like my Omegle story of like thinking that I found like a Harry Potter fan that I was going viciously back and forth in paragraphs with, and I thought that I had found a friend, and my parents found out. They were furious. They were fuming. And I'm just like, you guys are, they're like, why didn't we step up sooner? What the hell? My mom knew that I forgot about this. This is funny too. So my first ever email address was given to me when I was like 12 or 13. Is like, here you go, baby steps into the internet. And then I started using that as like my spam spam email. So then I made like a new email, but my parents kind of, every email that got sent to that email or the other email would get forwarded to them as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and then I forgot that I had, like, reactivated my Hinge account, and I made it go to my spam, and then my mom called me being like, what the fuck are you doing on Hinge? And I'm like...
How old were you?
This was last month. Because she's like, I thought this... Because it just said, welcome back to Hinge was all that the thing said. And she's like, I thought it was your father. So they had no fight, because my mom thought, because my mom just left, like, coincidentally, was on the way to a vacation with her friends, and she had just left my dad home alone, and then she gets an email saying, like, welcome back to Hinge, we've missed you. And so she's like, what the hell? My dad is like, why don't you check where the email comes from? She's like, oh, Skylar, what are you doing on Hinge? I'm like, I am 24 and lonely. Of course I'm on Hinge. But yeah, like, knowing what your kids are up to and just like checking in on the videos that they watch. I know so many people are just like, leave the kids to their own devices and literally, but like just checking in occasionally, because I feel like I would sometimes watch some questionable stuff, and maybe not on like my iPad or anything. I didn't have an iPad. Maybe not on, like, my laptop or my phone or anything, but even on TV, my mom would be like, what is this? And I'd be like, you know what? Now that you mention it, stupid. It is kind of stupid.
I think there's definitely, and I don't want to stray too far from, I guess, like, the point of this, but I do think there's definitely a fine line between, like, allowing your child privacy while also ensuring their safety. And obviously I think it also depends, like, well, maybe not so obviously, but like I do think it depends what age the kid is as well. And like I think it's important maybe to be a little more hyper vigilant when they're in middle school, and then when they're in high school. I don't, maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but I'm kind of like, kids are going to do what they want to do. And like, is it worth you ruining your relationship with your child by like stalking their every move and being, I think when it becomes such a major invasion of privacy without anything really warranting it, then that's when a lot of parents end up ruining their relationship and their trust and their bond with their kid. So then when something bad actually does happen and their kid needs someone to turn to, they're probably not going to turn to that parent because they know that that parent is going to be like, well, I told you so. I told you shouldn't have been doing that. And it's like, that's not a safe space to be in. So I definitely think there's like a fine line. But anyway, I am first going to talk about online grading portals, which I feel like maybe is kind of random. But I found this really interesting article. I think it was from New York Magazine. I'll link all my articles and stuff below, of course. But this is really interesting to me because I think when I started like high school was kind of when, well, maybe middle school a little bit too, but I wasn't really like checking it. But like high school, especially because that was more when I was like on top of my own grades. Like my parents were never really on top of my grades that much. I think just because I was like a good student anyway, and they just kind of trusted me to like, you know what you're doing. Like I don't really have to worry about it. But my parents, I don't think they knew how to check the online like grading portal. But now all of these parents have apps, like literally have apps on their phones, and they get notified every single time like a new grade is updated, anytime a point is lowered, anytime like anything happens in any class that their kid is in. So a large point of contention between parents and children like has always been grades, of course. But historically, like parents never really had the option to see in real time how their child is doing, like on every single assignment, with every single point, with every single percentage. Now, of course, with the standard of online grading portals, like parents are literally notified every single time a new grade is entered into the grade book. I think especially...
I would kill myself.
What?
I would just kill myself.
Yeah, and it's like, that's not fair because obviously like your grade is an average of how you do. Like if you get a C on one test, that's not going to completely fuck you over if like you have an A on everything else, you know? So obviously like, especially as a teenager, the one thing that I feel like you crave the most is autonomy. You know, like you just want freedom. You want to feel like you're an adult. You feel like I'm old enough to make my own decisions, especially when you can like drive. You're like, I'm basically an adult. Like, what do you mean? But especially like you want your parents to trust your decision making and trust that you are competent and capable enough to make the right choices for yourself. And I feel like constant access and like helicopter parenting around these online grading portals just kind of leads to distrust from both the parent and the child.
It also makes it so like you lack the trust in yourself to be able to fix your own problems.
Exactly.
Because like as a kid, if I'm like, oh shit, like I flunked that test and now it's up to me to like do really well in the next couple of assignments, because then like it's up to me to fix the mistakes and my parents never know.
Yeah.
But if I know that the second I flunk a test, my parents get like a ding, they just flunked this test, then like what's the point? What is the point of me like actively trying to do it if I know that I'm already fucking grounded? If I know that there's no point in like trying to crawl my way out of this hole that I've made, if there's no point, it's the same like the motivation is gone. If I was going to clean the dishes, I was going to clean the dishes, but getting home and your mom's like, you have to clean those damn dishes. I don't want to anymore. I was going to. Exactly. And now I don't want to because like you told me to do it very dismissively, and now it's like a chore.
Exactly. So it's so funny you say that. Dr. Jody Gold, a board-certified adult and child psychiatrist, says that her young patients frequently say that their parents ambush them about their grades. They walk in the door or sit down at the dinner table, eager to have like relief from the pressures of the school day, only to immediately be interrogated about a disappointing test result or an upcoming essay deadline. There's a lot of yelling and screaming at the kids. Why didn't you turn in this math homework, this Spanish homework? She says, being policed leaves kids feeling less competent, less in control, and less like their parents value them regardless of what they achieve. She adds, ouch. And of course, a greater percentage tells you very little about like what is actually happening in a classroom. Having this information doesn't lead parents to have a better relationship with their children or their children's teachers. Gail Cornwall, who wrote an article in New York Magazine about the consequences of these online gradebooks, says these apps have unintended consequences for family dynamics, often interrupting weekends, increasing conflict, keeping kids up at night, and making parents feel forced into an intensive helicopter style of parenting. This software can change the way parents and kids interact with teachers too, with the nature of the data, points and percentages, encouraging negotiation rather than cooperation. So kind of like you said, like I feel like these grade books have caused many to lose sight of the purpose of school, which is facilitating learning and development. Parents don't care why their child got a bad grade, just that they got a bad grade. Instead of working with the teacher to review the material and really understand why they missed certain questions, students and parents just want to know how they can get the grade back up. Like, it doesn't even necessarily matter if their child is actually learning the material. It's just that they want them to get a better grade on it. And I think it's really easy as a child to feel undermined in these situations as well. You know, it feels like your parents don't trust you enough to solve your own problems or to work with your teachers yourself to improve your grade. Instead, your parent goes directly to the teacher to negotiate a way to improve their child's grade. And this seemingly small issue of having your child's complete grade book in the palm of your hand bleeds into deeper issues of trust and autonomy. For example, I remember being in school and having to literally prioritize my study time strategically because there was just so many fucking classes and so many tests. So sometimes there was literally just too much to do. So what would I do? I would sacrifice a grade in a certain class that I had a good grade in so that I could focus more on a different class that maybe I wasn't doing as well in. That way, I was able to, if I had a B in a class, I was able to really focus on that test for that class that was coming up. But if I had a French test or something that I was doing well on, I might kind of sacrifice that test score so that I can do better in the other one that's more important. But had my parents been policing my grade work or my schoolwork in this way, they would have seen that I got a C on that French test. They're like, well, why did you get a C on that French test? And it's like, well, because it was more important for me to get an A on this other test. And I didn't have enough time to adequately study for both. And I mean, that's a whole other issue of schooling and grade work and why do we have 8 periods? At least for me, we didn't have block scheduling, which I feel would have been much better. But I had probably 6 academic classes a day. So then I would go home and I would have 6 classes that I had to do homework for. And it's what the fuck? That's not fair. But that's a whole other conversation. Anyway. And while it's important to be present and engaged as a parent, it's also just as important to allow your child the freedom to make their own choices and their own mistakes. And of course, you need to be there to support them when they need it, but it's also important for kids to learn how to handle their own real world consequences. There was this other article I read that it doesn't super tie in, but I do think it's kind of interesting. There's a study that came out that was basically potentially a big reason why children are suffering more with mental health crises now than historically is because they don't have the freedom to play outside of parental supervision. And that's how, as children, they really are able to grow confidence in themselves. You're able to kind of build trust with your parent through that. And they were kind of talking about even children as young as 5, when our parents were kids, their parents were like, oh, I don't want to see you until the sun goes down. They would just let them go out and play and hang around with their friends and stuff.
It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are? It's oh, fuck, where? I was wondering where something was missing.
And it's now people are so, and I mean, to be fair, rightfully so. I don't think we really we don't live in a society, whatever. But in America, we aren't super built to support children in that way. You have public parks and stuff, but there's so much traffic everywhere, and there's just not really great infrastructure in place for children to be able to go out and play on their own. And of course there's the whole other everyone's terrified of their kid being kidnapped and sex trafficked and all this stuff. And that makes it so that kids really never have unsupervised playtime, which is so important for their development. So that was a whole other thing, but I thought that was really interesting. So now, outside of the apps that directly impact your kids, their grade books, Life 360, etc., the continued presence of smartphones and technology alone, within a parent's relationship just with their phone, can negatively affect their relationship with their child. There was an interesting study that came out from the Journal of Development and Behavioral Pediatrics that suggests that parents' use of mobile technology around young children may be causing internal tension, conflicts, and negative interactions with their kids. Smartphones and technology have kind of blurred the lines between work and leisure time, now more than ever. So now when parents are home, they're still getting emails or texts from work, and they're not completely able to untie from that aspect of themselves and focus on their home life. So, for example, Like, let's say you just walked in from work, whatever, your kid wants to show your parents a new trick they learned. It's probably just like a really bad somersault, but that's okay. That parent gets an email notification at the same time. They're like, okay, just 1 second. Whatever they're reading or responding to visibly frustrates them. They huff as they send out a reply, and the mood in the room completely shifts. The parent's annoyed at whatever's happening on their phone, but the kid can't necessarily separate that from their parent's response to what they're doing. So now it feels like the parent is annoyed at them.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, you know what? I actually don't have to show you my somersault because you're visibly like
you're in
annoyed.
A bad mood.
Yeah. And I don't want to deal with that. Some caregivers report a trickle-down effect. Their emotional response to whatever they're reading on their mobile device, whether it was work, email, or bad news, sometimes affected how they responded to children. Study participants also described more attention-seeking behaviors from children when caregivers were heavily attentive to their mobile devices, which prompted negative interactions such as snapping at kids. So it's like, you're, busy on your phone or whatever, your kid knows that you're not paying attention to them. So then they're going to do whatever it takes to get your attention, which could be something negative. It's
annoying.
Yeah, exactly. So we are going to look at a rat study.
Let's go.
So buckle up.
Go.
But this is actually kind of interesting. So University of California, Irvine did a study where they placed some mother rats and their pups in modified cages that didn't have sufficient material for nesting or bedding. This would distract the mothers into running around looking for better surroundings and end up giving their babies interrupted and unreliable attention because they're so focused on just like, I need more bedding. Like I need to nest. Dr. Tally Barnum, professor of pediatrics and anatomy neurobiology, and her team compared the development of newborns raised in this environment to those raised in normal cages where mothers had enough material to create a comfortable home. While the offspring grew older, when the offspring grew older, the researchers tested them on how much sugar solution they ate and how they played with their peers, 2 measures of how much pleasure the animals are feeling and a proxy for their emotional development. So this is about how they're developing emotionally when their parents are like interrupted with their attention, basically. The rats raised in the modified environments consistently ate less of the sugar solution and spent less of their time playing and chasing their peers than the rats raised in a normal setting. So, I mean, obviously it's like a rat study. You can't like super be like, oh my God, that's exactly how it is with humans. But like, I feel like there is some merit to it, and there are definitely some conclusions that you can, kind of like hypothesize about it. That means that for people, there might be a similar critical time during which babies need to have a mom and dad's reliable and consistent attention in order to form proper emotional processes. That could include knowing that at a certain time every day, food will come, or that when a toy appears, mom will play. If mom is distracted by a call or a message alert and turns to the cell phone instead, then this pattern gets broken and the crucial learning that should occur might not happen. Other studies have shown that such poor development of the pleasure system could contribute to mood disorders such as depression and anxiety. So that's kind of like where I end with all of this with the little rat study. But once again, I think it's really interesting how a lot of the focus on technology is about how putting your baby in front of an iPad affects them developmentally. We're not really talking a lot about like how the parents' relationship with their phones and with technology affects their relationship with their children. I feel pretty lucky to have grown up in the environment that I did, where I feel like I was awarded a lot of freedom with my own use of technology. And even just, I mean, like my dad had a fucking flip phone until I was like 16. Like he wasn't really getting anything that important on it other than like maybe like calls to grandparents and things like that. Like, I think it's really interesting how now, as we, develop into a society that really relies heavily on immediate communication and immediate like gratification when it comes to our cell phones, of how our relationships with those devices really affect like development within within children. So I don't know. It's like you can take away your child's screen time and like not get them a phone until they're in high school or whatever. But I think being really critical of like me acting like I have children. My cats know when I'm when I'm reading a stressful email. The rats.
We're the rats.
But yeah, there were a lot of really great articles that I like looked into for this. I think there's still obviously a lot of like research to be done, and frankly, there's probably research out there that like I didn't even come across. So who knows? But I definitely think it's like something to be considered and something that not a ton of people are necessarily like being critical of, which I find interesting.
No, one of the things that always, even like when I was in high school, kind of made me mad is everyone's like, oh, kids in that damn phone. And I'm like, my parents, well, fine, parent is more addicted to like her cell phone than I am. And like, I'm pretty tuned in. And like, yeah, every time my grade would slip or something bad, she'd be like, it's because of that phone. It's because of that damn phone. And meanwhile, she is just like so glued into Facebook and Instagram at this point that I'm just like, peel it back. And like, I don't know. You're right that I feel like a lot of people are rightfully so kind of tearing down this idea that like, if you're going to put your child in front of the iPad to entertain them, then maybe like be more active as a parent. But again, like, so you're so right. Like, limit their screen time, take away their iPad. You have to also be engaged. And that means that you have to take a kind of a step back from being a plugged in member of social media. And like, I feel like a lot of people kind of don't take that into account either, that like, so you don't have to keep your child entertained the whole time. They're like, oh, my child reads and like uses their imagination and plays outside, whatever. It's like, okay. And on your part, then you also have to be engaged and entertained. Like, yeah, it kind of gives me like the 1950s parent model of like, don't talk to dad when he's watching the news or reading the paper or reading his favorite book. And like, you know, when mom is on her crossword puzzle, don't like, you know, fuck her up. But like, so, you know, it's not like a new experience that kids have to learn around when their parents are distracted or if they're in like a bad mood because of so-and-so, like mom just came back from bridge or from grocery shopping and like, you know, to tiptoe around her. But I think being engaged and not being like, my child is boring me, and like kind of tuning into the world around is something that I feel like people need to understand that they're going to have to give up a little bit. Like, not to say that you should also go on like a full social media detox, obviously not what I'm saying, but like, I feel like, yeah, a lot of people, you know, our age or a little older, millennials or so, are pretty accustomed to like just kind of when things happen, we're in it. Like when pop culture happens, we report on it. When something happens in the news or on Twitter, like we look and we are engaged, and being a couple steps behind makes us feel old, like we're like behind the times. And I'm like, yeah, but you're a parent, so you need to be comfortable with being a little bit behind the times. You need to be like, so wait, who is this like influencer I've never heard of? Congratulations, you have an offspring. This is exactly how it's supposed to feel. I did promise you a McDonald's story. Oh, yes. Here's what that story is. So this was my fault. And this was so it was junior year, and this was when I had like the Snapchat friends, I guess, but sometimes it would just be like, so and so is like following you on Snapchat. I wouldn't mutually. They'd be like, wants to be friends. And sometimes I would hit yes, but sometimes I would just hit like whatever. And a lot of times Snapchat would do this thing where it's like, we found this person in your contacts, and they want, and like, so like, I think one of my mom's friends was like, so-and-so from your mom's work found you in their contacts. And I'm like, whatever, I babysit your kids before, like, I know who you are, who cares? But mostly what I used Snapchat for day to day was talking to like a squad of like 10 people. And there was like it was like junior year, and it was an inside joke where it was just like, oh, the things that I would do for like a McDonald's right now. And I put on my story, I was like, it was like, cause like rehearsal for the musical or like the play, whatever, was running kind of behind. And I was like, anyone want to give me a McDonald's fry and a milkshake right now? I'll suck your dick. Anyone want to give me? And I'm there. Knees, anyone. And then my friend DM'd and was like, haha, I'm at McDonald's right now. Like, Venmo me $2.50. I'm like, thank you. And then the next in my story was me holding a bag of fries being like, thanks, queen. So one of those aforementioned mom's friends on Snapchat then showed my mom. And then I got this giant paragraph from my dad, who genuinely believed I was whoring myself out for McDonald's. He believed that I was throwing it back, that I was the throat goat for like McDonald's. And he was just like, I've never actually heard my dad be so disappointed in me before. He genuinely thought that I was like whoring myself out for like less, not even a full meal at McDonald's. And then I told him that like, obviously everyone who follows me on Snapchat knows it's a joke. Everyone does. aside from maybe this one person. And he's like, but like, what if someone screenshots? I'm like, it's Snapchat. I know when they screenshot. And he's like, you can't assume that you know everything, and then your reputation could be ruined because that could come around and bite you. And what about colleges next year? Like, it was. So that's at that moment I was like, I am so glad that my parents. On the one hand, I get it, but I'm like, there is not a single person over the age of like 26 that genuinely would see that picture of me in like a fucking ponytail being like, give me a pair of fries and I will suck your dick. Genuinely thinking that I was just like offering blow for some Mickey fry. I think everyone, whatever, but I'm like, I know that the generations have different languages, but it was shit like that. And I just know, because my parents were the parents that took my door off. So had they the opportunity to do so, I think they, with the apps at hand, I think they would have definitely leaned into that more, which I think is why I get really sad when I feel that people are like, hear that parents are using them. Because I'm like, I understand how that will feel, or how that would feel, because I can picture how that would feel. And it doesn't feel great, frankly. And I don't know. It's always going to be this fine line between like young people being like, we want privacy. And then you like reach 25 and then you're like, I had too much privacy. Yeah. And trying to find that line and knowing that the internet's a scary place and that the world's a scary place. And I feel like if anything ever goes wrong, everyone always thinks that it's your fault. Like, boom, your son just said some shitty things about women and is now in the principal's office and like, then you have no clue. You have no clue that your son was like that there's this whole other side of them that you don't know, or your child goes missing and you don't know about that until later that night, and then everyone's like, if only you had Life 360, like, why weren't you there, why weren't you in tune, and why weren't you like plugged into their lives enough? And yeah, I feel like to avoid that and just feel like in the name of safety to be really invested in your kids' lives. But like, there's a point when like, it's essentially the difference between like, no, I just want to know where my kid is. You're like, I just want to know what they're doing, and I just want to know like that they're being safe and that their grades are up. But also, it's like their diary's on there, and every mom wants to read their daughter's diary. It's a thing. And then before, you had to find it and read it, and now it's like, my daughter's blog is right there, like it's right there, and I can look at it. And like the temptation to just like read about their lives and get to know them, especially if they're doing that teenager thing of like, how was school? It was fine. How's school? It's whatever. Are you talking to Stacy? Not anymore. And like, if they're not giving you any details, it's like human nature to want to like press and learn more and kind of investigate and snoop around, but at the expense of being like, girl, please find the nuance.
I will say, to the credit of parents, no matter what you do, you're gonna get like, someone's gonna say that you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
And because the thing is, you're gonna have a helicopter parent who hears that like, you're not screen recording every move that your child makes on their phone. They're going to be like, oh my God, that's neglect.
You don't save the Ring doorbell footage of when they get home from school.
Yeah. And then, but yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's easy to be a parent. It's definitely not. And obviously every situation I think is unique, and different to how you choose to interact with your child or whatever. But I do think definitely in today's day and age, there is, it's important to be mindful of your own relationship with your phone around your children, but also of your child's relationship with their phone and things like that. And especially, not to be this person, especially with TikTok, I do fear that like, it's kind of making us stupid. It's kind of making us a little bit, I mean, it is literally shortening our attention span, like, to an insane degree.
Someone was on their phone at the Hozier concert.
Oh my God, this man. Oh, we forgot. Yeah, there was this man in front of us. He was clearly there with like his girlfriend or whatever. And it's like, okay, so you're not a fan. That's fine. But this girl deserved more. He was playing some fucking like Mario game. On his phone. It literally looked like Mario Subway Surfer or something. And he was just playing it like the entire time that Hozier was playing.
Fat like
vape clouds.
Yeah, elf bar clouds. And I'm like, and like at first I thought it was cute because like he and his girlfriend were like hugging the whole time, and then I realized like he's hugging because he's using his phone literally against her back, and they're hugging where he's facing the stage and she's like facing us, and I'm like, at least turn around so that she is in your warm embrace and she can see the stage of this artist. And I'm looking at her mouth. She is singing along. She likes these songs. She knows the words. And I'm like, you don't want to like turn around and like look at the stage? Because right now the man facing the stage is basically like watching like Family Guy, like funny compilations. Like it's a TikTok.
Yeah. Yeah. Horrible. I felt bad. I don't know. I'm like, at that point, just go alone. Like, just go to the concert alone. If you don't have any friends who like you would have a better time with. I don't know. That's just like, I feel like that's so disrespectful. It's like, even if you don't like an artist, like, if your partner, like, make a fucking effort to enjoy it and like be present in the moment. Yeah. Fucking iPad babies. Ugh. Horrible. Bring it full circle. Anyway, thank you all so much for listening. We are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. And we will see you next week. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.